Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is the weekly Spinner Rack, a live show where we are going to talk about comic books. Specifically, we're going to have three segments, basically. Comic book news, comic book reviews, and then a cool down where I'm going to just sort of ink and talk about other stuff that's going on in the world, be a little more loose, talk with the amazing live chat that I've got. Also, welcome your comments in the replies below if you're watching this after it's live. Always appreciate hearing from people what they think about the latest comic news and reviews, all that good stuff. Happy Lundi Gras. How many people know Lundi Gras? There's probably a few of you out there. Tomorrow is Mardi Gras, which is basically the day before Lent. But I got to go to college in New Orleans at Tulane, and that was a great 4 years. Made some fantastic friends, and got to celebrate Mardi Gras every year. About 2 to 3 weeks of parades and music and, throws, which are all sorts of prizes from candy to beads, of course. Lundi Gras is the day before. Mardi Gras is the day, and the idea is basically this big celebration so that people could indulge and have all this fun food and drink and stuff before they give something up for the Catholic or Christian holiday of Lent. So anyway, I always try to get a king cake for my coworkers, and I realize I didn't pick one up yet. So I might have to do donuts or something like that tomorrow. But if I can find it, I'm going to get them a king cake, which is a traditional Mardi Gras dessert. It's fun. Lovely to see everybody in the comments. I'm trying to think if there's anything I need to talk about sort of behind the scenes or anything, but nothing comes to mind. So I'm sure if it's anything important, we'll do it during the cool down at the end. There are some interesting books we will be talking about later. Fourth chapter of DCKO had some nice surprises. The Ultimate Universe really coming to an end. Here's the final issue of Peach Momoko's Ultimate X-Men. I'm really enjoying Ninja Turtles. Anyway, there's a bunch of nice books. But with all that said, we've got some really fun and crazy news that I want to talk about this week. So let's go ahead and start. I'm setting up some of my utilities over here. Let's get into the news.
We're sitting on top of the story of the century here.
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
Hi guys, this is April O'Neil from Channel 6 News, and I am here in beautiful New York City.
What do I have here?
I'm
drinking some delicious coffee, of course. Here. Those are all the topics we'll be talking about tonight, just so that you can follow along. With that said, let me bring up a little document here called The Amazing Comic Tropes PowerPoint. Hello, Dave. Hello, sister. I mean, hello, all of you. We'll be talking about Dork a little bit tonight. We'll be talking about that. Just giving some shout outs to folks in the chat. There is a delay between me and people commenting, just so you know. But let's get into it. We will talk eventually about this. What an incredibly flattering thumbnail I made for myself. Took it with a light directly above my head, which makes this nice, like, sort of thin, bald spot. It's not a bald spot, but it's very thin here. That looks really nice, Chris. That was good thinking. I go, what if I stood directly under a light that shined down on me? Just really helped make me look a little older. That's what kids want. Nice old man talking to them about comic books. All right. Here's just a pretty wild one. Getting a little spicy, but don't worry, YouTube. I've censored things. We're going to be okay. Nobody's going to get hurt. The original painted art by Frank Frazetta for Vampirella #1, the cover, it's going up for auction at Heritage Auctions. Although you may notice that there's something a little different between the art that's up for auction and what the cover was. I'll talk about that. But Frazetta had painted this image for Vampirella. First image people ever saw of her, back in 1969. And that was a collaboration. Forrest J. Ackerman and Trina Robbins had a bunch of ideas, but it was, of course, Frank Frazetta himself who painted the cover. Publisher James Warren had some ideas. So it was like 4 people that really co-created that. And that doesn't even get into who drew the first story, which I'm trying to remember. It doesn't, shoot, I should have checked, but I forget who drew the first interior story. Anyway, Frazetta painted over it in 1991 to get rid of the costume. I guess he was never really a fan, to be honest. He turned it into a nude, although you can definitely still see some remnants of the original painting. If you look really close at the high-res version, and I'm sure you perverts already have. No, but you can see sort of traces of things like, the collar or like a little bit of red around the hip. And the most telling is just her feet. This is a nude, but her feet still look like boots. There's no toes. They're just boot feet. Anyway, kind of funny. Frank did that, by the way, with a lot of his paintings. He would finish them, have them published, then he'd go back and still noodle around on it. So a bunch of his paintings do have at least small changes for him to perfect it. And he did turn a bunch of his stuff into nudes because I think it would just help it sell. Anyway, the auction runs, as I'm sure you all want to know, from February 27th to March 1st. As of today, the pre-auction bids are at $500,000. So I'm sure there's a few of you out there with $500,000. Pfft, that's chump change. Of course, that's where it's going to start. I have a few million in my back pocket, so maybe I'll get this classic comic book artwork. Now, I think it is a piece of comic book history. Very expensive history, though. Very expensive. I consider myself lucky to have been able to visit the Frazetta Museum that he had in, and I think is still there actually, in Pennsylvania. And his wife was working there that day, and she told my friends and I all sorts of great stories about Frank. Frank was still alive then, and when he was feeling well, he would be in his museum to talk to guests, but it was in his very last days, and he wasn't doing so great. But yeah. Oh, there you go. You know what? They might just cap it at that. They go, oh, you know what? That's too funny. We'll sell it for that price. That's a pretty good joke. We don't want to take any more money. We want a good joke. All right, I'll move on so that, your eyes aren't melting out of your skulls at the awesomeness. I wonder if this will take off. Can you guys see what this is? I'll talk about it. So basically, Neon Ichiban is the digital reading comics platform, but it also offers something different. You can buy versions that are signed or remarked on digitally. And these are some signatures and remarks by Dave Gibbons, the original artist of Watchmen. So obviously, historically, pretty important, but yeah. They're digital, to be clear. Let me acknowledge this. Thank you. America, no. What? Oh, sorry. Force of habit. Japan, no. Sorry. Popped in for their AI discussion. Oh, okay. Haven't even gotten to that topic yet. Appreciate the support. Lucky you living in Canada. Andy, always nice to have you here. Would this painting go for more money if he had left the costume? I didn't think about that, and I'm wondering now. Would it have gone for more? I think short term, it would have gone for more naked, right? While Frank was alive. I think now, I think more people would be happy to show it publicly and there's the history of it being Vampirella, I think that it probably could have gone for a little bit more with her costume still intact if it looked like the actual printed page. I think it might have been able to go for more if he hadn't altered it, but we'll never know. So that's just my take on it. But I think, somebody that's dropping over $500,000 on this would probably love to feature it somewhere important in their home, whereas you might not necessarily put it in your living room if it's a nude. You might, depending on what kind of a house and who you are, but you might not. You might put it in a den or a library room, because that's the kind of money you got when you can drop this money. I don't know. It's an interesting idea. So let me talk about these digital remarks. So nothing physical, but if you purchase it, you can sell it yourself on the Neon Ichiban market, which to me sounds darned close to what an NFT was, right? I mean, it's like a token or something like that. I don't know. It does, at least with this, you're getting a cool image, right? I get, I'm like, okay, Dave Gibbons drew on each of these. It might be digital, but he did draw on it. That part's a little cool. I really love Dave Gibbons personally. I think that's cool. But at this price, personally, no interest. 75 to 100. Oh, I said 100, but I meant 150 to be clear. I mistyped here. Prices range between $75 to $150. So that's a lot to pay for some sort of digital signature. As long as I'm talking, though, about this, there's something somewhat related I want to correct from last week. Chip Mosier is the co-founder of Neon Ichiban, and he also is co-founder, CCO of Distillery. And last week I was talking about Distillery, and I passed on the incorrect information that they had left. They had left Lunar and gone to Diamond distribution 2 months before Diamond declared their bankruptcy. Chip actually reached out to me just with a correction, and so I do want to put it out there. I had that wrong. It was 7 months before. It was 7 months. So that is actually a pretty good amount of time before anyone knew things were going to go bad. And I wanted to put that out there. But I don't know. But I would love to also jump back and open this up to you. Anybody out there, is there an artist that you love that you would pay? We'll just start at the low end, $75 for a digital signature. And it's like supposedly that is your digital signature. Although obviously I was able to show what it looks like here as news. So it's not like, you can, I don't know who you're going to show that to. Congratulations. No way. Okay. Well, this might not be scientific. My audience might just not, because I don't think I would either. I wouldn't pay $1 if you print it. I mean, it's not going to be high res. If they drew you a digital cover, I'd pay $100. Well, yeah, that's kind of different, isn't it? Because would you have the rights to it? I don't know. Unless you can cold wallet the asset. Oh, you mean like physically have it? Yeah. Okay. There you go. Doesn't seem like people are too excited. I was curious if it was honestly just me, where I was like, what am I getting here that's so sort of unique? Because I'll read digital comics, to be clear. I do see advantages to those. Sometimes I like to have physically less stuff in my house. It can be organized and you can access it worldwide. There are advantages to reading a digital comic. But the digital signature and remark, I don't quite get. I wonder. I would be very curious to see if it takes off. I don't get it. I'll just leave it there. I don't get it. I'm going to talk about some indie stuff briefly, just because, honestly, I don't think I talk about indie stuff enough. Sorry, EJ amused me. I'll buy that for $1. I'd buy that for $1. Sorry, I should have had a bigger mustache. All right. So last week I had mentioned how Abrams Publishing was publishing Alex Ross's upcoming book, Marvel Dimensions. This week was something called Comics Pro. That's a retailer event, like where comic book stores go to a convention and they get told about upcoming plans by various publishers. I thought that Abrams announced some really interesting books there that I just thought I'd pass on. For instance, I really love Derf Backderf. He's really well known for creating like real life comics. My Life with Dahmer is just an incredible story. He went to middle school with Jeffrey Dahmer. And he talks about, like, it's a biography of Jeffrey Dahmer, but it's also of his real life interactions with this infamous guy. I love a book of his called Trashed, which is semi-autobiographical because Derf worked as a garbage man for several years. And he talks about the ways that we all dispose of our garbage. And it's honestly way more interesting than you'd think it would be. Really, really cool. Kent State, he did a biography like 5 years ago or something on Kent State. Anyway, this is his next book, Dissidents, and it explores how the federal government targeted autocrats, vigilantes, communists, and cartoonists under something called the Espionage Act during World War I. It's through the eyes of a fictional character, but he works at a real magazine. So it's based on, it's historical fiction. Historical fiction. There's a book called Diana by Nate Powell. It's like the third in a series of graphic novels he's made. It's a prequel to his books Fall Through as well as Come Again. It's set in 92, and it follows an Arkansas punk, Diana Brogue, after her pen pal vanishes from her life. Very intimate, very cool stuff. Nate Powell did, among other things, the great March trilogy by Senator... oh, I'm so bad at names, guys. You know that I always forget people's names. Sorry, who's our late senator that was a big part of 60s civil rights? Marched in Selma, Alabama, and spoke at the monument with Dr. King. Senator... Oh my God! From John Lewis. Thank you, Dave. Oh my God! It just wasn't coming to me. I'm a senile old man. Anyway, great book, March. You should really read March. But yeah, Nate Powell's cool. Kevin J. Anderson, the guy that writes all those Star Wars and Dune books, Raul Allen and Patricia Martin are going to do a Doctor Strange book. Abrams has an agreement with Marvel. It's called Doctor Strange: Endless Nightmare. That's going to see Doctor Strange go into Nightmare's realm, underused villain these days, after the whole world is suddenly struck with insomnia. Doesn't it seem like Nightmare would be a really cool villain to be using in Marvel Comics these days? I mean, with all the different stuff we have as collective fears that he could be playing on and commenting on. Anyway, so they announced a ton more books. I recommend looking it up. One that looked interesting to me was Miss Green's Secret, and that's a true story of a black librarian who was able to pass for white. There's a new book by Darren I Love AI Aronofsky and from Ice Cream Man Martin Morazzo. So there's a bunch of different stuff that looks good. How terrible, by the way, just in my opinion, does Darren Aronofsky's... Is it a Revolutionary War show or something made completely with AI? That's a big turd and a half. That thing looks like garbage. I can't see how they could get it really that historically accurate either. They're going to have little bits, remnants of weird stuff in there still. Oh my God, Wally Gropius, you're fact-checking me on every little thing, but sorry, yes, he was a congressman, not a senator, apparently, and apparently I misremembered, and Derf Backderf went to high school, not middle school, and that was important enough to correct me. Thanks a lot. Jesus Christ. Can't get one by you. No, the Aronofsky thing looks like garbage, but it is also a good segue to pivot into Talking about this. I was surprised, but I guess I shouldn't be. I mean, somebody was going to do this, and there's a full movie being done with AI, folks. Hino Production announced on last Friday, that really famous mangaka, really famous for horror manga, Hideshi Hino, his book Living Corpse is going to get turned, well, I think actually has already been turned into a film adaptation completely using AI. Everything about it is AI. Let me go into what that means. The film is slated to open in July after unveiling on April 29th. So there's already a trailer. These are images from the trailer, okay? Script written by ChatGPT. Not going to get anything original there. Voices are AI versions of real actors. I would only assume if this is being released as a film that they got the release. But yeah, it's AI voices. And even the characters are apparently based off of real people. It's directed by somebody named Takeshi Sone. And Sone has been doing AI films since 2023. Just garbage. The manga came out originally back in 86, and it came out in English for the first time in 2004 by a company called DH Productions, Publications, I mean. That is not the same as Dark Horse or anything. It was called DH Publications. And the story, if you haven't read it, it follows a man. He's technically dead, but he exists in this weird, terrifying, undead state. I mean, it's a zombie book. It's all about body horror, and yeah, it's really, really creepy. Really, really creepy. Good point. Yes, I will be reviewing it in 20 years. Me and Jim. Hey, you remember way back in the 2020s, that first AI movie? I sure do. I don't know which of us I was just doing an impression of. I guess both. I mean, I guess technically it's based on something, right? It's based on a book, but still, that is just garbage. If you're not aware, Hino is alive. He announced in November that he's undergoing surgery to fight pancreatic cancer, and there's something about this that makes me feel like he might have done this and again, this is wild speculation. I could be wrong. But he might have done this for basically a cash infusion, because it's something that could be turned around quickly. But he's definitely signed onto it. He's not the only famous manga creator, or at least it's not the only famous manga to have gone through AI. Obviously, Osamu Tezuka has been gone for a long time, but his family authorized a completely AI comic book for his character Blackjack, the world famous doctor who is always on the run and travels the world solving mystery medical ailments. They did an AI comic that was authorized by the family. That was a couple years ago already now. But yeah, exactly. They're so against piracy, but they don't seem to be coming down on AI so much. It's weird. I feel like the two are sort of related in terms of respecting creators' rights. I feel like that's the thing that connects the two issues. So it's really funny that they can be on two different sides like that. But that is painting everybody with a brush. I think that there are, to be clear, a bunch of manga creators who have come out really hardcore against AI. And well, hey, there's pretty famous video out there of, he technically only did one manga, but the head of Studio Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki. Some people pitch him like AI stuff, and he is angry about it. It's a great video if you haven't seen it. He's like, this is completely soulless. He's like, I'd rather die than use this stuff. Yeah. ghoulish. Ironic, but yeah. Against paying creatives their due. Well, in some ways they're fair, like in terms of getting them opportunities to license stuff into, movies and games and toys, but they definitely work them to the bone. I watched a true crime show the other day and the reenactments were AI and it was terrible. Yeah. People are too enamored of it, but we're in this little window where the cost is something that people can do, right? These AI programs that are out there use up incredible resources, lots of electricity and computing power, lots of water to cool the servers down. Really bad for the environment. Just like, like one little prompt can really use, a 20-ounce bottle of water, basically the equivalent of that, to cool the servers down. So it's constantly using these resources. Okay. But all these companies that have generated AI programs and architecture and infrastructure want to sell it to the public as like, look what you can do with it. You can just have a little bit of an idea and it'll do all the work. So we're in this little window where they're giving it away at a cost. Like the people that have these servers and this software, they're giving it away. They're taking losses. They're taking massive losses right now. But if we don't all buy in and get excited about it, because they're going to have to turn basically a switch one day and start charging you to use Chat GPT, or what's the one that I'm seeing on all the social media this past week? It's like something like Seaborn or something close to that for a word. And it just lets you create these like live action looking videos, and people are going crazy with intellectual property theft. I scroll through and Optimus Prime and Pikachu are fighting, I don't know, Lion-O. So it's wild. It's wild. AI is operating at a loss, and that's what makes me think that there is a chance that AI will not ultimately replace artists. I think that that's obviously the goal here, but at some point, a lot of people will go like, hey, the cost is too high. It doesn't make that much sense. The technology will be there, and I'm not against some of the technology being there. If you were programming a simulation to see how a volcano might impact a city, and you wanted to use some AI to help, both run that calculation and show the results, well, that might be okay, right? So there are some potential uses. I'm not against like AI across the board. But they also want to replace jobs. There's lots of jobs out there that have replaced we'll start with call center jobs, but other jobs too, with AI agents. But they hallucinate and they have no empathy, and it pisses people off. I don't know. It's a mess. I have no interest in paying. I would never pay to see this. I don't know if I'd even want to give up 70 minutes of my life unless I thought that I could somehow turn that into really amusing commentary, kind of shitting on it. But obviously I'm coming in from the beginning with a perspective there. And honestly, when I do a review, I don't like to have that opinion before the thing comes out. So anyway, that was a piece of news that just stunned me this week. Obviously, I've talked about several different aspects of AI, just crazy stuff. But can AI do this? I don't think so. I'm moving on. Let's see. There's no such thing as, a hardworking billionaire or a moral billionaire. There's nothing. Yeah. Let's replace all the billionaires. All right. Gonna move on to some other news. All right. IDW had its quarterly investor call, and the CEO, Jonas, updated investors on some new IDW stuff. Thought I'd pass a little bit of that along. Here's a quote that I thought was interesting. We're focused on generating internally generated content where IDW will have pretty much for the first time company-owned content. Yeah, IDW does creator-owned stuff and licensed stuff, but they don't have their own properties. So I can see the advantage there. They did have a follow-up to the call where IDW said that there would still be, competitive rates and creator royalties. This would all be, work for hire, but would pay appropriately. So anyway, that's something that they want to look into doing. I get it. I get why they'd want to. IDW is also launching a crime imprint. They recently launched that horror imprint with books like Exorcism at 1600 pen, and of course they've already got Beneath the Trees, Smile. They're doing some stuff. Twilight Zone. Anyway, some of the crime books include Seven Wives. That did sound interesting. It's about like somebody that's a husband in like, what do you call them? Like the fundamentalist Mormon type people that can like marry multiple wives. So there's tons of suspects. Killer influences, that has to do with like online killing stuff, and fixation, where like, people obsess over somebody. Sounded interesting. Sounded potentially interesting. Did anybody see this week? Statistically, at least a few of you did. I'll explain. Just a bit of fun. If you thought you saw a Marvel character during the Olympics this past Thursday, you definitely did, because this athlete's outfit went viral, I would argue. His name is Austin Florian, and he's one of USA's skeleton racers. It's a little like luge, but you're on your front, and there's not quite the same track. Anyway, he performed with this custom painted helmet meant to look like Venom. And ultimately, the winners at skeleton racing at the Milano Winter Olympics, just to be clear, were Great Britain, Austria, and Germany. But I still think that Austin gave us the best style points. So props for repping a comic book character at the Olympics. I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about the delay. It's kind of fun, right? I like it. If it was Tom Hardy performing, all due respect to Austin Florian, but I think that Tom Hardy would have won it. He would have gotten so into character, he would have brought home the gold. Wait, he's not American. Eddie, I'm hungry for gold. I don't know, Venom. Let's go kill some guys so you can eat some brains. But they have to be criminals. Boy, that's a trilogy that really fell apart. I wasn't excited to begin with, but I thought that the first one was better than I'd have expected. I thought Venom was decent. I thought it was pretty good. But I give a lot of that credit to the actors that were in it. And then I'm like, oh, cool. They've got like, they've got Carnage as a villain in the second one, and they've got Woody Harrelson. Not a good movie, but the third one was the worst in my opinion. Just bad. It really, not so good. Eddie. I really want to see that. I haven't had time. I'll talk about movies and shows and stuff later when I'm drawing. Ultimate stuff. Marvel delayed several of its books in the Ultimate Universe, and it's obviously in its final few months here, wrapping up its storylines. So it was interesting that they've been hit with a delay all of a sudden. They've been basically on time the entire 2-year run. Ultimate X-Men, for instance, I just showed you that earlier. That came out. That's the final issue of this comic. That was Peach's last issue. Wow. Writing and drawing and like no fill-ins, and she did it for 2 straight years. Pretty impressive in my opinion. Anyway, the final issue of that came out on time. There's no announced delays for either Ultimate Spider-Man or Ultimate Black Panther, but there are delays on some other things. Ultimates 24 is going to be delayed from April 1st back to May 20th. So just over a month, about 6 weeks. Ultimate Endgame number 5 delayed from April 22nd all the way to June 3rd. Similar sort of situation. And the only reason that's really even worth noting is because, it's an interconnected series of stuff. So what this means is some impacts to other stuff. Ultimate Wolverine number 16, that's still planned for April 15th. Ultimate Universe Finale is still scheduled for April 29th. But what that obviously means is that Ultimate Universe Finale was supposed to be the final book, right? But now, if Endgame number 5 is coming out on June 3rd, that means Endgame will come out after Ultimate Universe Finale. So this was sort of a coda. Ultimate Universe Finale is a coda by all the original creators, just sort of telling one last little bit. So that's kind of weird. It's going to come out a week after Endgame's finale. Strange. Yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah, Ultimate Black Panther already done too. And I think we've only got one more of Spider-Man, right? So anyway, just sort of weird timing here to put. Maybe they'll ultimately back that up a couple weeks at this point. I don't know, but it feels very strange to me. Delayed books is the ultimate insult. I mean, that's good that some people enjoyed those movies. I don't think they lost money. The first one did well, and then each of them did worse after that. But I think that they all made money. But making money is one thing. People enjoying them is another. But I think that critical acclaim is a third important factor to the longevity of something. Oh, that is the joke of the week. The eventually universe. Whoa. All right, what else we got? I got a bunch of Spider-Man stuff. So, Marvel is launching a new Spider-Man series, and it's going to be set during the timeline of Brand New Day, which, of course, originally came out like 2008 through 2010. They sort of called that the Brand New Day era. That was right after the marriage was wiped out by Mephisto. But I also think if you go back and look at it, some really good Spider-Man stories and the creation of some cool villains like Mr. Negative, it was a good era. But yeah, they're going back in time and doing a series that was set in Spider-Man's past. Writer Dan Slott is returning. He is the most prolific Spider-Man writer of all time, teaming up with artist Marcus Toe. And it's telling a new story, just set in that era. It's clearly meant to put the characters that are in the upcoming Brand New Day movie in front of readers, but also give them something new. I mean, it's very obvious what they're doing here. That doesn't necessarily mean it would be bad, but it is very obvious what they're doing here. So yeah, Spectacular Spider-Man Brand New Day. Here's how Marvel describes it. Spider-Man discovers one of the most valuable items of the Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk, the lexicon. This directory of the Kingpin's criminal enterprise could destroy the criminal landscape of New York City, and that's Spider-Man's goal when he takes it. But Fisk isn't the only person who wants the lexicon. Mr. Negative would love to have his competitor's secret information, but so would Frank Castle himself, the Punisher. That's a decent enough premise, I suppose, for sort of like a bunch of characters fighting over criminal information. Sure, that's a good MacGuffin. The lexicon, that's a good MacGuffin. Could be fun book, could be pointless. I really don't know. I really wouldn't know. It's hard to think that it would be able to add a whole lot that would be meaningful since, it's set in the past. All I can think of is they could set up ideas and then jump back to the present and follow it up there. So they could do something like that. All right. Oh, that it launches May 13th, and the movie doesn't come out till July 31st. We also got some news about Spider-Man Noir. There was both a trailer this week and a little article in Esquire magazine. That's about the Nic Cage Spider-Man variant in, I think it's 1920s New York. I didn't double check that. I think it. Just a Rolodex. Don't make it anything cool. Just a Rolodex. Yeah, there were some photos in Esquire magazine. This one on the bottom was from Esquire. It's interesting. We get this shot of Nic Cage's character at work. He's an investigator, and apparently he's playing a guy named Ben Reilly, not Peter Parker. Although, of course, we don't know since we haven't seen the show. Maybe he's just going by Ben Reilly for story reasons. Hard to say. But we found out who Brendan Gleeson is playing. He was definitely going to be playing the villain, but which one? Silvermane. Silvermane. That's an interesting choice. Silvermane was a Bronze Age villain in a lot of Spider-Man books. I don't feel like they've used him a lot lately. I haven't come across him in a long time. He's, a typical, mafia type gangster. They always call it Magia in the Marvel comics for some reason. But he slowly became more and more of a cyborg until basically he was just an old man head with a super strong cyborg body. I doubt they would go super sci-fi, but I also, since this is set in the past, but maybe something sort of maybe like steampunk-esque, right? I could see something like that becoming a part of the show. Who knows? Jack Houston is in the show. He's going to play Flint Marko, we found out. In the comics, that's Sandman. Does that mean he'll have powers here? Who knows? Maybe. They said when they were describing Silvermane that he's been the subject of many assassination attempts, including recent ones by an arsonist. They say it's a guy who can create fire with his hands. I feel like that would be an indication of a Spider-Man villain called the Molten Man. Technically the stepbrother of love interest Liz Allen. Molten Man's a decent villain because he's actually one of the villains that gets reformed in the comics, and I don't think he's ever really gone back to being a villain. Down here, Lee Jun Lee plays a nightclub singer named Cat Hardy, and that definitely sounds like it is some sort of a take on Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat. Whether she'll actually be some sort of a thief or anything, who knows? Maybe. I've never heard that. Silvermane was Felicia's dad in the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon? I never watched that. That's crazy. Huh. Yeah, he's definitely in it's not a movie. It's a TV show, and he's definitely the star of it, yes. I don't know why they're not using the name, though. To be clear, the producer guys that also make the Spider-Verse movies, Lord and Miller, Christopher Lord, Phil Miller, they said something like, I forget, I should have got the actual quote, but they said that there was like a reason they decided to name him Ben Reilly, maybe to like make it like somehow not confusing to audiences, but it sounded like a bunch of made up ooey majooey. Anyway, it's going to be eight episodes. It's in options for both black and white or color. It's coming later this year. I thought it looked pretty good. The only thing I'll say is I wanted to see Spider-Man Noir using he's got like a gun that shoots webs. And I didn't really see him doing that. But who knows? Who knows? Just to be clear, he could still be Peter Parker, and maybe he's using this alias for his job, or maybe he's hiding out from an enemy. I don't know. Or maybe he is just named Ben Reilly. I don't know. It's an alternate universe. It doesn't really matter too much. Sony is making this. So that's not correct. Sony is making this. They can definitely use Peter Parker if they want to. I never thought of that it's 8 episodes like the 8 legs of a spider. Oh, by the way, he doesn't go by Spider-Man in this. He goes by the Spider. But I think that's totally cool, and that's in keeping with, the pulp heroes of the day. So when I say 1920s, it might be 1930s or 1940s. I don't know. I'm not the showrunner. Ignore Dave. He lies. Nothing but lies. All right. I'm going to shoot down a couple rumors. A pair of bleeding cool rumors. Both got shot down this week. One, Rob Liefeld had joked a while back that Marvel was going to make a Star Wars Avengers book. And you know what? I bet someday they do. Just to be clear, I'm sure that they will someday. But not today. Bleeding Cool took this, and then they added to it saying that they heard that Mark Miller would be writing a Star Wars Avengers book. But just a couple days later, Hollywood Reporter's Heat Vision column shot the rumor down. They said that was unsubstantiated, that from who they know, it's not true. And I feel like if it was true, we would have heard it announced at the Comics Pro retailer event. We would have heard it this like a day or two ago, but we didn't. So I don't think that's true. If you've seen that reported on, that there's going to be a Star Wars Marvel crossover, I don't think that's true right now. I bet they do it someday. Of course they'll do it someday. They've got the rights to both things. They'll do it someday. Next, artist Nick Klein. He posted to Twitter that Bleeding Cool's report, which he quoted, about the Hulk ending at 10 issues. So let me rephrase this. Bleeding Cool reported that Hulk was going to end after 10 issues, and maybe that's to make a way for a version of Hulk that's closer to the movie version in Brand New Day, right? But Nick Klein says, no, it's always been the plan that we would do 10 issues. It's the same reason why Incredible Hulk just ended and we just started Infernal Hulk. It's the second of 3 planned chapters to this story. So they did Incredible Hulk, setting up Hulk versus monsters. Now we're in Infernal Hulk, where this ancient evil has possessed the Hulk's body. Hulk is just a flat out, like, dangerous villain. But then there's going to be a third chapter, which I would imagine on some level is going to be, like Bruce Banner versus the Hulk, something along those lines. So anyway, if you've seen either of these rumors, I'm just saying probably not accurate. Probably not accurate. I'm going to talk about another pair of things that came up this week. These are 2 books that just came out this week and both did very, very well. Specifically, we're talking reprints. So Brett Bean released issue 1 of Dork, and Image already announced they're going to do a reprint of 25,000 more copies, and that they will have that in stores by March 4th. I wanted to pick this up. It was sold out by the time I got to the store. It was sold out. So it did well at my store. And this is a fantasy, action, comedy. It's a bunch of genres. It follows a half-dwarf, half-orc. He's got a prophecy that he might be able to interrupt. The land that he lives in has been at war for like 1,000 years. Maybe he's going to be able to stop it. It's fun. The art's very animated. Looks really cool. So that's Image. Over at DC, the first sort of book representing DC Vertigo's relaunch, although technically, of course, the book Nice House by the Sea retroactively got put into the Vertigo line, but like as far as sort of a new wave of ongoing monthly books, Bleeding Hearts sort of represents that. So yeah, Vertigo is back. Bleeding Hearts by Dennis Camp and Stepan Morian. That's also sold out and being rushed back to print. DC says that will be in stores by March 18th. And that series follows, I'm just reading this from DC, 2 damaged souls bound by a shared trauma they cannot outrun, drawing them into a slow burn descent where love, obsession, and monstrosity blur together. Cool. Monsters, love, tragedy. I think both look cool. Well, then it probably sold out. Yeah, I can see a little bit of that. But I think Warm Bodies was definitely a little more young adult, sort of schmaltzy, whereas Bleeding Hearts is maybe a little more of a gothic romance type of a story. Think more Bronte, Wuthering Heights, and less Twilight. That's just my quick take. I don't know. These are both books I actually was interested in reading. I don't have them to review for you guys this week. My store sold out before I got there. So, yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to read them. I could have, of course, gotten a digital version, which I do from time to time, but then I saw that they were each getting reprints, so I decided I'm going to wait and I'll pick up a reprint. See what all the hubbub is about. Do people still say that? Do you go around and go, "Hey, bub, what's the hubbub? What's going on? What's all the hubbub?" It's a popular phrase, right? No. Read the comic online. I mean, I like I said, I could. I just decided I'd wait. If I'm going to pay for it, I'll get the print edition. The point of shuttering Vertigo in the first place was probably just that Vertigo was less, initially anyway, of an idea by DC and more an idea by Karen Berger, the editor. And it was her tastes that were picking out the creators that were approached to be part of Vertigo. And I think that once she left, that sort of the identity sort of faded. And so it just sort of faded away more than just like abruptly ended or anything. That's my take on it. Yeah, I should be saying the hullabaloo. What's the hullabaloo? I think that was the name of my campus newspaper when I was in college. All right. Oh, weird. Somehow the first sentence was my header, and I had it out of order. Brouhaha. Yeah, we've got hullabaloo, brouhaha, hubbub. Lots of B's, though. Lots of B's. All right. Going to talk about this fun little thing. 247 Studios. That's a creator-led comics imprint. We talked with one of their creators recently, Sean Chen, about his book Evermind. Well, anyway, they recently announced this past week a partnership with the manga publisher TokyoPop. Good for them. This is going to give 247's comics access to TokyoPop's distribution. They've got Random House, Penguin Random House as a distributor. That's a huge deal. It'll also allow them to get variant covers by top-tier manga creators. That's really, really cool. Thank you. Thank you so much. It says, "Hey, Chris, your show is a bright spot in my week. If you've ever wondered if you've made a positive impact in the world, please know that you have." That's very, very kind of you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind words and for, of course, the super chat. It does mean a lot to me. It really does. Wow. Very, very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you. Back to this news. A bunch of the books that will initially be published by TokyoPop, they're going to include genres like cyberpunk, Evermind, martial arts, supernatural crime drama. So yeah, Evermind, Heroes Be Damned, Bladesmith, Zero Ghost. I think that's written by Justin Jordan. He did Luther Strode. Anyway, some good creators and some good ideas in there. 247 Comics Presents and Spotlight will be a quarterly flipbook anthology series. I guess think a little bit Marvel Comics Presents, if you ever read that in the 90s. I think that could be a lot of fun. First issue of the anthology is going to feature original stories by established pros Larry Hama, yes please, always, Howard Mackey, a lot of respect, as well as emerging creator Anderson Carmen's original series Cyber League, and it's going to have a cover by Daniel Warren Johnson. That might sell a few copies, right? Daniel Warren Johnson, he's doing okay. He's doing all right. I'm very excited to see what he announces as his next creator-owned book. We know it's going to be something sci-fi, but yeah, I keep expecting it like every week. Not yet. But yeah, congrats to 247 for this deal with TokyoPop. That's really, really nice for them. This one's almost a heartbreaker of a missed opportunity. A few months ago, Paramount had announced that it was scrapping their plans to do a live-action R-rated adaptation of the comic Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin. Obviously, that is an incredible seller. That book is still selling very, very well several years later. Based on an idea by their original creators, Eastman and Laird. It's a good comic, and Paramount was going to make a live action adaptation. I thought it was a good idea, but then they canceled it. Well, this week, the original live action April O'Neil, Judith Hoag, she was at the Big Lick Comic-Con in Roanoke, Virginia. She was on a panel, and she revealed that she had actually been approached to play that role again for The Last Ronin. She said she would be interested if they decide to revive the project, and she called the comic wonderful. It's a good idea, folks, because The Last Ronin is set in the future, where only one turtle has survived the hand. I'm not going to spoil too much of the story, but that's the premise. But April O'Neil is one of the few supporting characters who's still alive. So obviously she'd be older. It would really fit well with the fact that Judith Hoag could still play that. Yeah. It's a bummer. She also had a role, more of a cameo in the live action duology. I think it was the second movie, Out from the Shadows or Out of the Shadows. She had a small role in that, playing the boss of Megan Fox's April O'Neil. You can find it. Like, it's a cut scene. By the way, she still looks fantastic. She's in good shape and looks youthful and energetic. She's really really cool. And I kind of love the idea of going back to her and having her play April in a completely different type of live action Ninja Turtles. I think it's stunt casting that benefits it. It adds a little bit of a layer to the project. So I'm kind of disappointed that Paramount basically walked back a bunch of plans for Ninja Turtles and decided that they didn't want to go too dark, I think, with it. But I think that's a mistake. I think that one of the advantages of Ninja Turtles is how versatile it is. You can do martial arts, you can do crime and gritty stuff like that. You can do crazy sci-fi space stories and time travel. You can do stuff with supernatural and mythic stories. You can do stuff about New York. You can do stuff about Japan. There's a lot of different ways you can play with Ninja Turtles. But I think that the did I call it the hand? Thank you, Artist Flavus. I didn't even think about that. I said the hand in the article. Obviously, the Ninja Turtles villain are the foot, which is a parody of the hand. That's so funny that I missed that. Stupid. Maybe it shows you, folks. I really am tired lately. I have been working really hard at both my day job and on comic tropes. And so I'm missing things. I am making little mistakes throughout my life that I'm seeing, little mistakes everywhere. I really am. And it's because I'm very fatigued and exhausted. I'm just giving you a peek behind the curtains. I'm happy enough, but I am very tired in general. I haven't made any, fundamental errors, say at work, but I found myself making stupid mistakes, like leaving my key on the desk and walking away, out a door. And I'm like, oh, I need the key. Excuse me. Turning right around. Lots of little mistakes like that lately. So I feel I feel stupid and tired. That one amuses me a little, though, that I called it the hand. Because you can see where my mind was a little bit. All right. Enough of me making these stupid excuses. I'll keep going. No, I only eat cat litter. I will never make that mistake. I will never eat cat food. That's what I poop on. All right. This is just a fun little one. Toy Fair took place this past week. One thing I thought was kind of excited as a nerd that likes G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe is finally bringing back the file cards on the back of action figures. But that's not really comic book related, so I'll talk about the comic related stuff. McFarlane Toys had a booth, and they revealed prototypes for several upcoming figures that are based on comics other than Spawn. Shadowhawk, Savage Dragon, they're both revealed as part of the upcoming Elite Collection Image Founders line, which I think is cool. On social media, Eric Larson said he actually had input in designing this version of Savage Dragon. So I think that that's cool that he got to do that. There's two new Hellboys, actually, based on the Mike Mignola's Supernatural Detective. And also, there were figures from World of Warcraft. That's a newer license that McFarlane has. There's Shadowhawk, which looks as good as Shadowhawk, I think, has ever looked. I don't really remember this extendable baton weapon, though. I don't remember that for some reason. Maybe he always had that. I don't know. It's a good design. It's like, is this a little reminiscent of like Batman's cowl? A little, but I don't think that Batman should have exclusive rights to that. I think it looks like a hawk. I think it's a really cool design. I like Jim Valentino's stories. I really do. I like how silvery it is. Look at how the proportions are on Savage Dragon. That is definitely how Eric Larson draws classic dragon. Like really humongous, tiny waist, thinner legs. It's cartoony proportions, but those are the proportions of the comic book. I like that. If you're going to make it, yeah. Department of Truth cryptid. Maybe someday. And also, I really like this one where Hellboy has that crown of flames. That looks awesome. And I love how angular they made these muscles. It's like you can't 100% duplicate the shadows of Hellboy. Maybe with a statue you sort of can. But for an action figure, I thought that was a really cool take on an adaptation of the line art by Mignola. So I thought all three of those looked like they really were honoring the creator's vision in a cool way. So I just thought I'd show that. Yeah. I didn't see what the prices are. And if you tell me that they're $60 each, I would not doubt that at all. I think that's what toys cost these days. I don't fully remember him having a shield either, but I bet he did. I'm sure it's based on the comic. Silverhawk was cool. Silverhawk. I need a day off sometime soon, but I'm really, really close to finishing the latest comic tropes, so I'm just going to power through it. I'm really close. Anyways, just showing you some fun stuff I saw online this week. Supergirl. Let's do some Supergirl stuff. By the way, I'll also be doing an episode about this Supergirl book, but not talking about really Tom King or Bilquis Evely or Supergirl. So what's left? A couple things. Something I think is really cool. But what's the news? Superman Day takes place very soon, April 18th. That commemorates Superman's debut in Action Comics #1 all the way back in 1938. This year, DC is saying that they're going to celebrate Supergirl and make it the summer of Supergirl. Of course they are. You know, the movie's coming out. That makes sense. I get it. They're doing a few reprints of like important Superman stuff too, but I'm going to talk about what they're doing for Supergirl. They're going to start with a facsimile edition of Action Comics 252, first Supergirl introduction from 1959. There's Supergirl Being Super, coming-of-age graphic novel by Mariko Tamaki and Joelle Jones, great creators. That's going to return in a newly colored and reformatted edition. Curious. On Superman Day itself, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, the Superman Special Edition comes out. And that's just going to reprint the first chapter of this comic as a sampler. if you haven't read it, I really do think it's a fantastic book. Additional releases. We've talked about this one before, Supergirl The World. That's an anthology where creators from different countries tell a version of a Supergirl story in their country. We've got new young adult comics featuring Supergirl, a trade paperback and compact comics version of the Woman of Tomorrow collection. There's going to be a one-shot Summer of Supergirl special, the new Elseworld series, Supergirl Survive, and facsimile reprints of Supergirl and the Legion of Superheroes number 23 and Lobo number 1. Lobo number 1. The Biz. So that's kind of cool. Also, a work-in-progress art-focused edition of the first issue of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow so that we can see Bilquis Evely's pencils reproduced. That sounds really cool, as well as some variant covers. So they're doing a lot to promote Supergirl. Yeah. Yeah, I think that that it's a great character for the young adult market too. She just fits very well. I think that the compact comics edition is a very affordable way to pick it up if you haven't read it before. I would strongly recommend it, to be honest. I thought it was a great story. Last piece of news is also DC. 2000 AD publisher Rebellion. They announced this book, Judgment on Gotham, by Simon Bisley, John Wagner, Alan Grant, from 1991. It's going to be reprinted in a hardcover edition, a deluxe hardcover. I remember reading this book back in the 90s. Thought it was cool then. I think it's cool now. It's going to be an oversized hardcover. Comes out May 6th. Retails for basically 30 pounds. And that pounds is important because the last bit of news that I have for this is, due to rights issues, it is only being released in the UK. So if you want this new hardcover deluxe edition, you're going to need a friend in the UK. So unfortunately, it doesn't come to all of us. Don't know why they can't resolve that. But if it sells well, you have to imagine that can grease some wheels, and maybe we will get a version of it over here. But congrats to all the folks in the UK or the European market that have access to this. It's a really fun, cool comic. It looks great. It's the beginning of like all these crazy crossovers that Batman started doing in the 90s. You know, he was meeting Predator and aliens, and I guess he didn't meet Archie, but yeah, he met Judge Dredd. You could, but just know that there's going to be a markup and importing and stuff like that. So, yeah, you could buy it on eBay, I'm sure, but for more than this. And then there's one thing that caught my eye. Look at this, Palmer's Picks with an homage cover that looks pose-wise reminiscent of Wizard, the Guide to Comics #1 with a cover by McFarlane. Well, Tom Palmer Jr. Wrote at Wizard for many years. He wrote the column Palmer's Picks, where he would highlight indie comics. He would interview important creators, Charles Burns, Harvey Pekar, Jeff Smith. Did he ever interview Dan Clowes? I can't remember. I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Chris Ware, I know he did. It was, as time went on, that became, to me, one of the highlights within Wizard. They were doing all these articles of like fantasy casting movies, and I was like, this isn't news. But I always liked Palmer's Picks. I like the insight into cool indie books. Well, this week he posted to the CKRS Facebook group, which is basically a bunch of folks that were fans of cartoonist kayfabe. It's been around for many years now. But he posted there that he plans to publish his old columns. And there's the website. If you go to his website, palmerspicks.com, you could also just go to shop instead of, like there's various sections. You could just go to shop and you'll see it there. So yeah, he's reprinting a bunch of his columns, reformatting them, new art and stuff. Could be really, really cool. Thought I'd highlight that. A nice look back at especially 90s era indie comics. The 90s had a lot of great books. They really did. All right. And with that said, why don't we pivot to doing the reviews of the week? Yes? What do folks say? Yes, please. Wow. With a response like that, who am I to say no? All right. Time to do some reviews.
Let's review.
Review it.
The review.
The reviews are in. I repeat, the reviews are in.
Go to your reviews.
What? Speaking of bad reviews.
Don't worry about that review.
Let's review all the facts.
All right, gentlemen, let's review.
Before we do, let's review.
Those reviews really came out fast.
Maybe we can review some right now?
I'm not going to review all that again.
Now let's review.
Not my worst review.
Let's review, shall we? To review.
I think I've reviewed about as much as I can.
There we go. Let's talk about some of the comics that came out this week. And I really wish I could talk to you about some of the most popular books like Dork or Bleeding Hearts. You know, I was surprised by how popular the first issue of each of those were. But they sold out. And I'll pick up the reprints. Let me zoom out just a tiny bit there. And we'll talk about some of the books that I did get. I have said that DCKO as an event is pleasantly surprising me. I do have some critiques. For instance, I'll be honest. I didn't absolutely love the art this week or this month. Week? Yeah, it's coming out pretty often. It's not that it's bad. I just felt like some of the previous issues did have a little bit more detail. And it's not like I need detail. But as you can see in these fights, there's no real backgrounds, right? Which just makes it sort of feel like it's taking place in this sort of like non-area. And I get it. Like they're having these battles in this sort of apocalyptic wasteland, but even like a little bit of an establishing shot like this goes a long way. This page feels way more tangible or something like that to me. It's okay. But to give it credit for what I do like, it has a lot of nice surprises. Okay, the whole series as an event has subverted my expectations because when it started, we basically, they gave us brackets, right, of all these heroes and villains that were going to be fighting. And we were sort of speculating, you know, who's going to win between Zatanna and Big Barda, things like that, right? Who knows? And it surprised us right in the beginning by having Joker seemingly kill Batman. Oh, well, that was a surprise. And then to add to that, instead of just having this character and this character go head to head, they would put them in like groups and give them challenges. Like you have to find a weapon and whoever is the half of you that don't find a weapon in the allotted time, you die, you know? Okay, that's a nice little surprise. I didn't expect it to be something a little bit more than just punch, one side, the other side. This is interesting. I went from not caring at all about the event to really enjoying it. It's been a pleasant surprise and not just fan service power scaling mess. Exactly. Not all the characters I expect to win are winning. And that goes into this. A big part of the fun of this is we get to see a little bit of the absolute versions of characters battle the mainstream universe. Okay? And I was wondering, you know, are these going to be, you know, maybe like, I don't know, robot duplicates or like, you know, just a hallucination of the absolute characters? But seemingly no, because Darkseid is also doing some weird time travel stuff, like going back in time and conquering time backwards from like this point where he wins in the future. It's saying that these absolute characters come from the near future. So we really are getting, you know, a version of Batman versus Batman. Now, they're mind-controlled by Darkseid, and when you get a mind-controlled hero, obviously that puts them at a little bit of a disadvantage. It's still interesting to examine some different fighting styles. And I think some of this makes sense, even in tiny ways, like this. Scott Snyder, keep in mind, is writing this, and he wrote a long run of Batman, and he's writing Absolute Batman. And there is some differences in fighting styles. For instance, Absolute Batman is a beast of a guy, but he fights with like an axe, right? That means he's a close quarter combat fighter. Versus one thing we do know about the Batman we read in the mainstream books, he uses batarangs and smoke bombs. When he can, he fights from a distance. And so that actually gives him a little bit of a tactical advantage over a Batman who's technically a lot stronger than him. I thought it was an interesting idea. Wonder Woman, Absolute Wonder Woman, has access to all sorts of magic, and she uses it in this. You know, she transforms herself. And I don't want to give away the biggest twist in this, but I will say one of the sort of second biggest twists that just moves the story forward, which you've already seen, Batman Returns. They've had this 4-issue Batman Night Fight series, and it explains how Batman had a backup plan and how he gets back into the game. I kind of like that. It does feel authentic to Batman planning ahead. It plays fair. But the person that wins, ultimately, there is a winner to this. This is issue 4 of 5. Well, guess what? There's a winner in this. Kills everybody else. And it's not like there's no like take backsies or maybe they didn't really win. One of these characters legit beats all the others, kills them, gets basically Omega energy and could fight Darkseid. But then we get that there's more to this story, and we go to the future and we see Darkseid working with the Legion of superheroes who are obedient to him because he's conquered the future, like I said. And so there is going to be some time travel stuff, but they established that right from the first issue. They had time travel characters like Booster Gold and the Time Trapper. They had all these like elements set up, and I do think that they're playing very fair. Yes, which gives them a little bit more sort of strength and power in this. It makes the mainstream heroes the underdogs. It is a tournament, but I think it subverts a lot of our expectations of what a tournament could be. I've enjoyed it is what I'm trying to say. I think that story-wise, it's given us a lot of nice surprises, a lot of interesting matchups. The only criticism I'll have is that some of those matchups are very brief in these DCKO books. And personally, I'm not interested in reading the tie-in issues that probably expand those. So if you are, I bet you're honestly getting a more complete story. But I'm getting a version that I'm very happy with. You know, I'm getting the main story. It makes sense. It plays fair, but it gives me some surprises. So my only complaints are, didn't absolutely love the artwork in this. I don't think it's bad artwork. I just didn't absolutely love it. They're sort of fighting in this nebulous area that just, you know, just doesn't give me a whole lot. I felt like the characters weren't always 100% on model. To me, this doesn't instantly read as Bruce Wayne. This doesn't instantly read as Superman, but it's not off model and bad. It just, that's personal preferences and tastes. And I'm not going to really knock it too bad. The action stuff is fun. The action stuff is good. But the story, it's really cool. I'm not going to say whether you're right or wrong, but I don't know. All I can say is like one of the characters definitively wins over the others, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I do recommend this book, actually. And I find myself surprised when I like event stuff, but I also think that 5 issues of an event series is not too bad. It's a lot better than a 12-issue event series, but I'd also take 12 issues that are like those 12 issues and are playing fair right up front, as compared to how, like, you know, ever since somewhere around Civil War, Just too many tie-ins. Too many tie-ins. There was a new issue of Absolute Wonder Woman this week. Technically, it's an extra. It's the annual. And the cover here that I got is by regular artist Hayden Sherman, but the interiors are not. The interiors are by, I think it's Mateus de Ilias. Let me see if I can find the credits page easily. Mattia de Ilias. And I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. But it is written by Kelly Thompson. I will say that I think that de Ilias is similar enough that this felt of a part to me with Absolute Wonder Woman. Obviously, the panel structure, not going to compete with what Hayden Sherman is doing there. But the style has enough of sort of an open, gentle line art feel to it that it feels of a kind. And because it's written by the regular author, story-wise, this is great. This is the perfect use of an annual. It isn't just like one bigger story with some useless backups. This is one big story. And it is a follow-up to something that happened somewhere back around issue 4, like about a year ago or something. Wonder Woman. No, it was a little more than that. Whenever Wonder Woman beat that first big monster, the Tetracide, you may remember she used magic and she took the mystical form of the Gorgon. You know, Medusa could turn people to stone by looking at them, right? This sets up the story that ever since then, she's been communicating with the goddess Athena or begging for an audience with Athena. Just like shows through all of her adventures that she's taking these breaks to pray to Athena to meet with the goddess. The reason why? By taking Medusa's form, she felt horrible in that form, and she wants to free the Gorgon from being trapped in that form, of not being able to look anybody else living in the eyes. So she does get a meeting with the goddess, and she's granted a boon. In exchange for giving up her powers, she could look the Gorgon in the eye and not get turned to stone. So she goes on this adventure to try to save the Gorgon and break that curse. She thinks that the curse is too harsh, too mean. And she does meet the Gorgon and have a battle. Oh, by the way, this is like what Athena looks like in her armor, which also has a helmet reminiscent of what Wonder Woman has been wearing. I didn't pick up on this. Like, that's so owl-like. Athena, traditionally associated with owls. I had never quite picked up on that, but the eyes of Wonder Woman's helmet and of Athena, very owl-like. And I think Hayden Sherman designed this armor. Yeah, it's really, really strong. It's really, really strong. I don't know this. Shin Megami Tensei Boss. I would say that this issue is not strictly necessary to moving forward the narrative. However, it feels like it's still a relevant piece of information, and it feels like a story that belongs in the ongoing thing. I like that the Absolute books have followed up very, very quickly with subplots that they've established, like this one. They followed that up. You know, when Batman and Wonder Woman met in Absolute Wonder Woman, like just a couple weeks later, they met again in Absolute Batman, but it made sense because now he knows Wonder Woman and he asked her for information. It's really cool. I like that even though this is a very different Wonder Woman who has, you know, like magical abilities as compared to, you know, like all the sisterhood and god friends and stuff that she has in the main universe. She's instead just got like hardly anybody else. And she's got her magic. But what she does still have is empathy. And I think that it forces the character to think of creative solutions to beating her enemies. I get the sense that she's an amazing warrior, but that she's trying not to engage in battle when possible, that she's giving people the opportunity not to fight, and that she's looking for peaceful solutions, even for people that she would consider a villain. If she feels that they've been treated unfairly, that she's going to fight really hard and sacrifice to help them. And I like that empathy. I like that empathy quite a bit. I really feel that that helps get to the core of who Wonder Woman is. Yeah, it showed her empathy and compassion for others. And I think the best Wonder Woman stories do that. I think that that has become the thing that can differentiate her the most, is just how bottomless her well of empathy and compassion can be, even though she's a badass and is willing to fight and, you know, doesn't take shit from people. It's just that she's willing to give them a measure of grace and fight for them. I really like that. I like that it helps define the character these days. So this was, I was waffling about getting it because I was like, well, Hayden Sherman didn't draw it, and, it's sort of an extra story. But it's a really good story. If you enjoy the Wonder Woman comic, I'll tell you that this feels like a very special, big bottle episode within the greater story. So if you like the regular comic, you will like the annual. And if you don't read the monthly comic, I'll say that you can read this, and it takes place, it's its own separate full story. Even though it's sort of like, is building on stuff that's established, everything you need to know is in one story. So it's a decent introduction to the character, which I think an annual sometimes should be. Sometimes it should be to pay off something that's been building for a long time, and sometimes it should be a good entry point. Just tell a single standalone story. But I think that annuals should fulfill one of those two purposes. I feel strongly about that. The last one I'll go into any real measure of detail reviewing this week is the final issue of Peach's X-Men book. And this also subverted some of my expectations. I think that what we can see in retrospect was that the team of heroes beat their big opponent, which was Shadow King, a few issues ago. And there was still time to go, and we were getting like some revelations about stuff going on behind the scenes. And I was wondering, is Shadow King going to return, or is there going to be somebody behind Shadow King that's an even bigger threat? And no, it's not quite that. This is more like an extended coda or epilogue to a big story. So pacing-wise, it now makes a lot of sense to me. We get closure with a bunch of these girls. But the main character at the beginning was definitely Shisako, Armor. And she seemingly sacrificed herself to defeat Shadow King. So now we've been getting 2 issues focusing on her friends, like Nico and May. And it's really nice, honestly, to see them sort of come to terms with things. It sort of ends with just a little bit of a mystery still. But you know what? I like this, okay? It's like the end with a question mark. Not 100% of everything is tied up. We don't really know the full fate of Hisako. But here's why I like that. Here's why I really like this. First of all, there's a bit of an emotional impact to us not really seeing that character on the last page, of what started as her story. It's a team book, but she was the heart of it. She was our viewpoint character. So there's a sadness that felt real, felt earned. I felt like that I felt it. I also tend to like a superhero story that doesn't just cleanly say, and they beat it, and there's no more trouble. Because life isn't quite like that. Let me compare it to something that's probably not what everybody's expecting, but there was a TV show called Angel, the spinoff of Buffy, right? It's about a vampire with a soul, and he was always battling to redeem himself for these terrible years where he was, a vampire without a soul. It was a curse that was put on him. He was given his soul back, so he felt remorse for everything he'd done. And that show ultimately ended with him giving up this prophecy where he could maybe have a peaceful like death, and instead going into a huge battle, and we don't know how the battle will even end. And it feels like a cliffhanger at first, but then you go, no, you know what? Like some of these characters that are like choosing to be heroes, it's a bit of a never-ending battle. You never get 100% closure. You have to just sort of set new goals along the way for your path. And I feel like that's a little bit what some of these friends of Armor are coming up with, that they're going to have to set new goals for themselves, but life goes on. I read it. I know that Whedon had input in it and stuff, and it's okay that it continued, but it was still the end of the TV show, which was a measure of closure for this whole story. Anyway, it was just sometimes I like a superhero story that doesn't just say, and they all lived happily ever after. They say, and now we keep going, and now we keep going, and you reset. And there are more stories to tell. But we're going to end now because this keeps it from being a tragedy. Because the difference between, a drama or a comedy or a tragedy is when you decide to end a story. If you keep going long enough, every story turns into a tragedy because you lose the character, don't you? That's what happens. They all become a tragedy if you stay with it too long. I'll give just quick little reviews of some other stuff that I picked up. I am very much enjoying this Ninja Turtles era with writer Gene Luen Yang. What it does in this is it moves the story forward faster than I expected, but in a good way. Splinter, the father of the Turtles, has come back from the dead. Now, it was the reason I think it played fair is two reasons. One, the villain did it by mistake. They were trying to get like Shredder back, and they accidentally brought Splinter back. So I like that. I'm like, okay, that wasn't the Turtles just getting their father back for themselves, right? And second, it brings a problem with it. Splinter can now see glimpses into the future where his sons die. So he has taken on this role as Umajagi, and he kills off whatever threat he sees will kill one of his sons in the future. He's trying to create this perfect timeline, basically. But obviously that goes against a lot of his teachings. And the Turtles find out in this issue. So we're not going to like drag out this as like a weird mystery, because we, the audience, already know that this is Splinter. So now the Turtles learn. And it's about the drama and the conflict of them seeing their father do something that kind of goes against the teachings. And we need to sort of, we understand on one level why Splinter is doing this. And on another level, we're like, but that still doesn't feel authentic. Like, what is really driving him? So there's still a little bit of a mystery. I also like, there's this new witch villain that works alongside the Foot, kind of like as a mercenary. She's called Shinigami, which is a Japanese death god. If you've read Death Note, you know what Shinigami are. This one is more of a witch. But it's a fun character. I like that this is leaning into some of the supernatural elements of Ninja Turtles, because it feels like they haven't touched those for a little while. They've always been there. A lot of times we get the sci-fi mutagen enemies, or maybe aliens, maybe robots, but we don't always get the supernatural. And because it hasn't been touched in a while, I'm enjoying what they're doing with it. I had missed this issue a little while ago. I really like the Hulk story that Philip Kennedy Johnson and Nick Klein are doing. However, I will just do a quick criticism. I think that Kev Walker is a good artist, right? But I'm also frustrated that we're starting a new chapter. We're only in issue 3, and we've got a fill-in artist for almost all the pages. We've got a couple establishing pages by Nic Klein. I'd personally be okay with like a delay or something like that. I really like there to be a consistent art team, I think, on a book. And I'm realizing I don't think I minded the fill-in issues as much in the first chapter of Incredible Hulk with these guys, because they kept having the same regular fill-in artist most of the time, Danny Earls. And while Danny doesn't draw in the same style as Nic Klein, he does have some similarities in how he uses shadow. And but Kev Walker's style is much more open line art, not like lots of deep shadows. So it's a very different art style. It's a very different art style. It bothers me a tiny bit. The artist on this is Kev Walker for this issue. And I'm not saying Kev Walker is bad. I just, I wish it was sort of I wish it was Nic Klein or somebody that was at least a little closer to his way of rendering so that there was a little bit more consistency. And I get why they had Kev Walker do this, because this is sort of going away from the monstrous Hulk and all those monsters and talking about Bruce Banner, who now cannot turn into the Hulk, and he's trying to live a quiet, hidden life. It's a different type of story. I get it. But I wish, I don't know, I just get, like, we're in issue 3 and we already need a fill-in artist. I'd rather wait a month. Blood and Thunder continues to not just excite me, but amuse me. It's a sci-fi futuristic bounty hunter. And in this one, we're just learning a lot more about her initial enemy slowly turning into an ally. But look at this 2-page spread real quick. In this one, Blood goes to a very prehistoric planet, and I just love this 2-page spread by E.J. Sue. I think that's really, I don't know, it's just cool looking. There's lots of stuff in this that's cool. Blood meets a member of her people, because she's technically an alien that was raised by humans, so she's never seen one of her people before. It's also pretty funny because she sees her and she's like, "Are you my mom?" And you know, the prisoner is what he's been known as, this big evil, he's not really evil, monster, is like, "Don't be embarrassing. That is not your mother." Can you imagine what kind of a coincidence it would be if I landed on a planet and the first person I met was your mother? It's just the member of the same race. I'm enjoying it. It's good sci-fi. It's good comedy. And there's a great 2-page spread in this issue of Transformers by Dan Mora. Look at this. Let me zoom out and show you this 2-page spread. I know that's kind of small, but it's how you can see both pages. Look at all these Transformers battling in one big 2-page spread. Every once in a while, I think that the book earns the right to use that kind of real estate for a big battle. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on. Requires a lot of planning to lay it out like this, but I love it. I think it's great. The other sort of fun thing about both G.I. Joe and Transformers these days is their ongoing subplot with Mask, which was another Hasbro toy line. So they've been doing a little bit with that. There's some fun stuff like in the background where Thundercracker has switched from being a Decepticon to an Autobot. Just this basically is a payoff with some really interesting battles. There's a scene where only half of the Constructicons are trying to break one of their fellow Decepticons out of a prison. So only the top half of Devastator forms, but he's still really dangerous. Can you imagine that, though? Like, that's something fun to do with robots. He's only from, like, the chest up and his arms, and he's just running around beating them up. He doesn't have his torso or legs. Can you also, just to be clear, like look at all of that detail, like on stuff like this, and keep in mind that Dan Morrow was also doing DCKO Night Fight at the same time, as well as a bunch of covers and Justice League and Superman. It's bonkers how fast the guy works. It's bonkers. And you can't like look at this and tell me, oh, he's using like easy modeling software or something to get the pose, because there's all sorts of like extended foreshortening, and a bunch of Transformers don't have the proportions of a human being. So, you know, I'm sure he is doing a bunch of this with like digital artwork, but it's a tremendous amount of work. He just can draw fast. That's for sure. And I hope he doesn't burn himself out. But it was a lot of fun. By the way, great cover as usual by David Nakayama. A lot of times David has said he likes to have, like, whenever possible, one central character have almost all of their body take up the cover, because there's something very dynamic and exciting and easy to digest about that in a cover. But in this, it's very important to have two characters fight. And I think he did a good job of framing the action such that there's still sort of shapes that like guide the eye around in a circle here. The way he like laid this out. No weird tangents, just some nice, pleasing shapes that guide the eye in a circle. I think that that's something that could like make for a good single issue to explore at some point. And I hope that they do that at some point with the Autobots that are called the aerial bots, because in this book, they killed one of those 5. They killed like one of the arms. So he can still form Superior, but he's missing 1/5 of himself. And they've had like little hints about how sad they each are, but I think a full issue talking about like just like what the emotional version of that is when you're in a group of 5 people and then like one of you isn't there, or what it's like to work together like that. I think that there's stuff there that you could combine to real life work situations. What's my pick for book of the week? A lot of entertaining books. I enjoyed Blood and Thunder and Transformers very much. I enjoyed Ninja Turtles very much. I think ultimately for me, it is legit between Wonder Woman and DCKO as far as what I enjoyed the most personally. And I think I'll just go with recommending Absolute Wonder Woman Annual because it tells a complete story in and of itself. So that's probably easier if you're not already reading this to get into. But if you're already reading a bunch of these, I'll say that DCKO was a heck of a great issue for an event book. It just had really cool twists to it that felt earned. I'm going to doodle a little here while chatting with everybody about stuff that's going on. Starting with, I'll end that. Let's see. What do I want to... I think I'll get out the Batman versus Ice piece that I was noodling around on. I think that would be a fun one to peck away at. I saw a movie this week that I thought was absolutely hilarious. And I do strongly recommend it. And I think that the less you know going in, the more you might enjoy it. It's a Canadian fake documentary. It's had a show and a web series before, but it's called Nirvana, the Band, the Show, the Musical. And the reason for that, without getting into spoiling it, I'll just say it's about 2 guys that have a band that they call Nirvana, the Band. They actually don't know about the real group Nirvana. They just call it Nirvana, the Band. And then that became a 2-season show in Canada. And so it was called Nirvana, the Band, the Show. And now they've made a movie about it. It was the hardest I have laughed in so long. I laughed so hard at that movie. I really strongly recommend it. It was great. And it's almost like the less I tell you, the better, because, you don't want to, in either horror or comedy, you don't want to give away the surprises, mysteries too. Sometimes, like in an action movie, you can be like, oh, it's cool because, they go to the Vatican and they outrun a boulder, But I would say if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't even watch the trailer. Don't read anything. If you can, but if it's playing near you, just go see it. And I promise you'll understand. You don't need to have watched the show to get anything from this. Okay, I promise. Just on like the absolute broadest strokes, it's just about two guys that want to book a show at a local venue. And they always have crazy plans to do it that are more elaborate than is necessary. And it's fantastic. Randy's saying we didn't get Nirvana up here. But Randy, come on now. Wait a minute. Mudhoney, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, that was all like about 3 hours to the south of you. You're telling me you didn't hear about that at the same time? Bullshit. They had to be playing there. They had to be. Anyway, the movie just really had me laughing super hard a lot. Really, really funny. Now I'm like just binging those 2 seasons of the show because I liked it so much. It's also a very good show. Strong recommend for what it's worth. Strong recommend. I have not laughed that hard in quite a while. So very, very happy with it. Yeah, Pearl Jam. We only got the Nirvana never showed up. Yes, very good for people that have watched the show. I know what you're talking about, but yeah. Is there anything else that I've really seen? I'm watching The Pit with Chrissy, which on one level is just a medical drama, but it's very fast-paced with really interesting cases and some really cool characters. So The Pit is a really entertaining show on HBO. And once I sort of catch up on that, if there's time, there's a bunch of stuff I'd love to have time to watch. I'm trying to think. I want to finish Fallout. There's some other shows out there that I want to see, but I can't think of right now. No, I'm not. I like Wuthering Heights, but and I like the actors in it actually, but the reviews for it aren't that strong. They say it's just too condensed and not quite. It's not quite accurate. Oh yeah. She's got like one comic that like distills Wuthering Heights into like 3 panels or something. It's been. I wish Kate would release another funny series of comics because she is hilarious. She's just incredible. I mean, don't get me wrong. If she wants to, I'll read anything she creates. If she wants to do another, sort of personal book like Ducks, I would read that too. I've never read a bad thing by Kate. She used to come to Small Press Expo, so I got to meet her a bunch back in the day. She's really something special. Have you folks seen? It does feel like reductionist to call it this, but I'll call, just for the sake of simplicity right now, I'm going to call it a YouTube comic book drama. But that is simplifying it too much. But of Blerd Without Fear, Ernie had some very pointed criticisms that I think were fair about Comics Explained, Rob. So Ernie released a video about Rob that's pretty well timed too, and it really did blow up. And that part, first I'll see how many people are familiar with it so that I can figure out how much of it I might need to break down to discuss it a little bit. Because I have a few thoughts, not a lot. It's not really my place to have any big thoughts on it, though, because it is talking more about the Black experience for, Black History Month as it relates to comic books. So I'm not talking about it on any level like that. Not familiar, says Malik. Anybody else? I'll just give it a moment because there's always a delay. I mean, to be fair, Blerd has a good following, but Comics Explained that he's talking about would pretty much be the biggest comic book channel right now that is active, just since Comic Historian passed away, but similar. Okay, a bunch of people saying either saw little or none. So the long and short of it is, Comics Explained, if you've seen that channel, it digests storylines, right? That's basically what they do. Whereas Ernie, or Blerd Without Fear, tends to do more like breaking down a character arcs, sometimes the significance of a certain run. I wouldn't quite call them always like an essay about an artist or anything, or a writer, although that's a piece of it a lot of times. Anyway, so but Ernie was, I think, justifiably irritated by how Rob on Comics Explained just doesn't really report on Black comics, even though ostensibly, he's a Black guy in the comics reviewing space, and that he's like that's fair. That part I'm not going to really comment on, because that's more getting into are you Black enough? Who knows? I'm not going to talk about any of that. That's none of my business. What he had a point with was, though, Ernie did, is he pointed out that Rob follows on social media some of those super far right, racist guys like Nerdrotic, and who are some of the others? I avoid them, so I don't always remember all of their names. Well, it doesn't matter, but some of those really, reactionary channels that are just like outrage farming. They just talk about how terrible Captain Marvel is, or how woke things are, right? Critical Drinker, yeah, I think that is one of those terrible channels. So he's like, not for nothing, it's kind of weird to be following people like that. And Rob put out a response saying oh, I follow them because, I want to know what the other side is thinking, and stuff like that. But I don't think that's a really good excuse, because you can definitely look that stuff up every once in a while. You don't need to be following them every day. So I think that Ernie had a really good point there. And then when they got into arguing what comics should or should not be being discussed, there's some good arguments that I think Ernie has, but it's not really my place to talk about that. I think it is pretty weird that that Rob follows some of those channels. I really don't get it. But all I can say is that beyond each of them sort of doing a video about it now, a lot of the places certainly Twitter, and to a degree Threads, have had a lot of discussion about it, and just a lot of arguing with people that watch the channels and stuff, which I find very unfortunate. But also, I'll just point out, folks, well, some of you know this, I have a people-pleasing mentality, right? Which is honestly sometimes that's nice. Sometimes it means that I'm being kind to people, but it also can mean that sometimes I'm trying too hard to find the middle ground between two people that are arguing. Whereas that's not really my job. And so I look at it and I'm trying to be give people each a bit of fairness and stuff, but that's not really the right way to handle these things. Like sometimes you have to just nip it in the bud and be like, nah, you can't give some of these channels and people the air to breathe. That's a net negative. So yeah, I'm a little disappointed in myself, and like my instincts are all to just sort of be like, well, it's too bad you guys can't get along. Ultimately, I think I think it's good that Ernie made his video. I do. But I also hope that people give Rob a little bit of space to potentially come back and realize exactly why he's being criticized, and maybe make some adjustments. And if he's never going to love Milestone specifically, that's not the end of the world. But he probably should cover some more Black comics creators, especially during Black History Month. You know what I mean? He really should. But so should I. I look sometimes at my content, and I think it shows me on like a meta level when I look at comic tropes. I go, boy, how much of this is my bias towards certain things that I like or don't like, and how much of it is reflective of percentages of actual creators in the industry that I only have a certain number of videos about, female creators, a certain number of videos about, Asian creators. Or is that like, is some of that me? Probably. But is some of it also like the actual percentages of creators in this field? Yeah, that's probably a piece of it too. And that's not all my fault. What was I thinking? I've thought about doing a history of Milestone Comics a few times. The closest I've come would be my video on Dwayne McDuffie, who I really liked and respected a hell of a lot. I think he was an incredible writer. I really miss him quite a bit. And I think the thing that's kept me personally from talking about Milestone, I know I've made this about me now, but I don't have a lot to say about the rest of it. I was just using it as a jumping off point for conversation here. I only liked about half of Milestone, if I'm just being honest. I respect all those creators. Look, Static was great. I also personally really liked Icon. I think Icon and Rocket were pretty darn interesting, and I'm a fan of MD Bright, Doc Bright. I don't think he got enough props during his lifetime. By the way, he's got a book that came out posthumously this past week, written by Larry Hama. I think it's called The Center Holds. I'll be picking that up at some point. So I liked Static. I liked Icon. And when I say liked, I mean I was buying it off the shelves as it came out because I'm older. And Hardware I liked. I liked Dennis Cohen. But did I love Blood Syndicate? No, I didn't. I'm trying to think of what some of the other books were at the time. I picked some of them up initially, but I didn't like them all, if I'm being honest. Those were the three I liked. Static, Icon, and to be fair, a somewhat distant third, Hardware. Yeah, there's a Larry Dwayne book. Not Dwayne. I said Larry Doc Bright. MD Bright. He was the artist back then. Yeah, love John Paul Leon. He was incredible. A lot of great artists, no question. No question, great artists. Great writers, too. Yep, Doc Bright on Quantum and Woody was excellent. I found him initially because he had a really long run on G.I. Joe, and he was one of the better artists, I think, on G.I. Joe. Really? You didn't like his original costume? I think it's pretty... I think at the time it felt very authentic for like what people were sort of wearing. And I mean, he wore a Malcolm X hat, and I think that in and of itself at that time was pretty accurate to like what people were doing. At least that was my experience. I'm trying to think what else to say about Milestone. Yeah, I liked a lot of the artists. I liked a lot of the writers, but I only liked about 3 of the books on an ongoing basis. Static has had the most lasting impact, which is a little interesting because he definitely has a lot of similarities with existing characters, right? There is a bit of a trope of Black characters having electricity powers. Not exclusively, but there's a lot of them. You know, Storm, Black Lightning, certainly Static are like probably the 3 most prominent. But also you look at him and I think that it shows just what works in comics though. You know, the sort of nerdy teenager that comes into abilities and sort of it's like Spider-Man, Nova, sometimes Robin, a bunch of teen superheroes, Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan. Oh yeah, there was Zombie. I didn't care for Zombie. It just didn't connect with me, if I'm being upfront. Yeah. No, I don't know what Johnny Christmas is. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think that the cool thing about Milestone is what it did in retrospect, because it was published by DC, but to be clear, it was not owned by DC. That was creator owned, and those creators carved out their own empire and negotiated with DC to publish it. But DC and Marvel have, from time to time, had creator-owned lines. Epic and Icon at Marvel. DC has had things like, Vertigo. So it was really impressive that they could carve that out. And in some ways, the timing was good because this was close to when Image and Valiant were doing well. So people were primed for trying new things. But a lot of that was speculation. And Milestone was hit really hard after only really being around for a couple years by like the 90s bust. Steve, nice to have you, even if it's later in the show. Thank you very much for the support. Never too late. Never too late. Thank you so much. Never heard of that YouTuber, I got to say. But Dwayne McDuffie is a great writer. Great writer. Really, really admire him. I'm not really drawing, so I'll just put it on me. But at some point, maybe I will make a Milestone episode, and I'll just be upfront that, like, hey, I read them all back then, but I really only liked about half the line. But it was important. I mean, how many other... When it comes to, like, important Black creators, that was cool that, like, a bunch of them banded together and worked together all at once, you know? It is a little too bad that Christopher Priest wasn't able to stick around. He'd helped form a bunch of the ideas for those books, but didn't stick with it once they launched. You know who people don't talk about a lot? Maybe. I don't. If I do it, here's the thing. If I did it, I probably would not do it during Black History Month because that would feel too much like I'm pandering. You know what I mean? Like trying too hard. I don't know if it would be supportive or if it could be perceived. Maybe I'm getting into my own head too much about that. Maybe. I've talked about Christopher Priest a few times. I talked about him a lot, to be fair, in the context of when he was very young, working on Spider-Man and what he did with Hobgoblin. So that's probably not the most flattering take. But I also interviewed him on this channel. If you want to look that up. Christopher Priest has written plenty of stuff I really, really enjoy. I think Quantum and Woody was a great creation by him. So yeah, I would consider doing that. You know what people don't talk about enough? Wasn't George Harriman, the creator of Crazy Cat, wasn't he a Black artist? Let me look that up real fast to see if I'm remembering something right. Because maybe people don't talk about him too much within the comics sphere, but... Yeah, he was, because he was his family was all from like the Caribbean. George Harriman, Crazy Cat, 1913 to 1944. That comic was. That's a pretty early black creator. I've done episodes before on some important ones that have shaped things, like Matt Baker. Anyway, is there already a documentary about Milestone? Hey, look at this. Millennials like me love the Static Shock cartoon. See, I read the comic, but then by the time the cartoon was coming out, I think I was in college and I wasn't watching a lot of TV, so I never watched the cartoon at all. I only know the comic, and the original comic at that. Reggie Hudlin has written some good stuff. I liked a bunch of his Black Panther stuff, no question. I really liked, actually, going back to Christopher Priest, I liked his, I think I've talked about him on Black Panther. I think I have. Feels like I have. Let's see. I've been thinking of collecting the Deadpool Classic collected volumes for Joe Kelly, so I guess because of Priest, I might to read past Kelly. Yeah, you should. You should compare and contrast. You'll see what you like. Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you, Rocky. Some of these creators, yeah, get like a little forgotten. That when you talk about, especially Golden Age era, and even like going into, I've done before. What is it called? It's not Victorian era. Pre-Golden Age comics. What is pre-Golden Age? I made an episode about it, and all of a sudden I'm forgetting the term. Because there was a Victorian age, but then there was something else, wasn't there, in between? I could just look up my own episode, I guess. Platinum Age. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Much less analyzed, but there was Victorian Age, Platinum Age, and then Golden, Silver, Bronze, Modern. And at some point, I think that Modern didn't really even officially have Bronze, I would say, until a few years back. Bronze was kind of unofficial for a long time, but I think it's considered pretty official now. Yeah. Yeah, I talked about that. The center holds. Exactly. Platinum would be like Yellow Kid and some other early comic strips and stuff that became comic books as reprints. But yeah, like pre-Superman, there's some comic strips and some early publications in book form that you could argue are comic books. So yeah. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, Kyle Baker doesn't get talked about enough. Great cartoonist. Really, really energetic, cool stuff. That's a fun idea. Kyle Baker would be a fun artist to talk about. Yeah. You know, I'll never run short of creators to talk about, because there's creators that I can talk about multiple times, like Jack Kirby, right? Oh, right. So the last episode I did was already almost a month ago. Jack Kirby. All I can say is sometimes comic tropes takes me way longer than I anticipate. I am currently more than 2/3 of the way done. I just need like one more day to finish editing an episode about wow, how fatigued am I that I'm having trouble remembering the stuff that I was working on earlier today. Oh, right. Nick Dragata on Absolute Batman is what I'm doing. Jesus. Yeah, Bitterroot is badass, man. That is some good comics. I'm not caught up on all of it. So when you say the rest, I read the first trade that I had. I need to catch up to the one that they published just in 2025. Jim is a great creator. I'm so glad I've been able to become friends with him. And we just realized, that there was a Friday the 13th a couple days ago. We only realized it like about a week beforehand. We're like, oh, we should do an episode. It was too quick. We couldn't get it together, but we lucked out. There's a Friday the 13th next month. So we're going to do, we haven't decided on exactly which one we're going to do, but I think we're going to do a trash movie bonanza about one of the Friday the 13th movies. I think that at some point that's a series we'll cover the entire series of, and then find another horror series that we dip in and out of while doing other things that interest us. But we both like that. It's a trash series, but we like it. What else is going on in life? Yeah, I could just keep noodling around on some of these drawings, but if I'm being honest, I'm really, really tired. And I can see that because I'm having trouble remembering stuff that I should be able to remember. Wait, what? 3 this year, the most you can have, I've heard. Oh, there's 3 Friday the 13th. There's 4? Is it 3? Wow. A lot of years you only get 1. Okay, well, we couldn't get it done for this latest one, obviously, but we'll get another. So, yeah, tomorrow, happy Mardi Gras, folks, to those who are aware and celebrate. It's a really fun day. Man, I'm trying, man. I'm trying. It's tough. And I just found out that I couldn't get the work days off that Emerald City Comic-Con is here this weekend. So I don't know if I'm going to actually get to go to that convention or not. Doesn't seem like I'm able to get work off. Sounds like you need some more Mountain Dew Baja Blast. Well, I'm trying to drink this coffee to stay awake. I'm trying. I'm a fan of Nancy. Ernie Bushmiller, hilarious. The recent stuff by Olivia was hilarious. I don't know who's doing it now. I forget. That's possible. There are a bunch of comic strips that I would like to do episodes about. I would like to do one about George Harriman on Crazy Cat. I would like to do one about Bill Watterson on Calvin and Hobbes. I consider that within the purview of my show. So there are some comic strips that I would very, very much like to do. The tricky thing there is comic strips have so much material, right? It takes a long time to get all the images that you need. It takes a long, long time. Well, I enjoy doing it. I'm just having trouble remembering certain things. I've been making a lot of mistakes in life. Get some rest. Thank you. I appreciate both of you. That's nice. That's right. Carolyn Cash. Pee Pee Poo Poo is her book. He was a piece of garbage, and I don't think he was that funny, and I don't think his art was that good. There was a brief window when Dilbert was new that I was like, yeah, these are some pretty good observations about work life. But then he never really challenged himself as an artist, and it quickly became unfunny. Yeah. Oh, you guys are so nice. I appreciate the super chats. It means a lot to me. I hope you know that. So let's see. Tomorrow I work at my day job. And so that means that I think, because I don't think I can finish editing tonight. I'm just so exhausted. I can do a little bit, but I'm not going to be able to finish it. Realistically, just to set expectations, I think I should be able to finish Comic Tropes this Wednesday. So it might be up Thursday. That's probably the when it will come out. And then I'm also working on 2 other Comic Tropes. One is an exclusive for my patrons. I'm talking about the Crow soundtrack and how it relates to the comics. And then I'm working on a future episode of the show, research-wise, talking about some coloring stuff. Because I don't do enough about coloring. You know, there's so many good... Yeah, get some rest and a king cake. Well, I better not have the king cake because I think part of my exhaustion might be that my blood sugar is out of whack. I've been trying to eat well, but I don't think I'm drinking enough water, so I definitely can't have any sugar. So anyway, what do I use for editing? I use the Adobe products. I subscribe to them on a monthly basis. So, is there anything else? No, you guys have been a great audience tonight. I appreciate it. Feel free to spread the word on this show. I have a lot of fun doing it. Some interesting comics coming up for sure. Just know that there's also some interesting comic tropes episodes coming up. And tell you what, I'll give you a double salute because you more than earned it. And keep reading comics, everybody. See you real soon.